Radio transmission towers stand like glorious rebukes to nature, crashing through nature like totem poles, a celebration of our ownership of nature and air and space. Aside from loving them for what they do, you can love them for what they are, huge, monolithic tourist attractions.
I'm David Neal. Ever since the age of 5, I've been interested in tall structures, but it's only recently that I have become interested in aerial support structures.
My name is Roger Ponsford, and I've been in the tower business for 35 years. Despite some apparent similarities in the structures themselves and the industry still holds a fascination for me.
My name is Alan Dick. My career started driving tunnels. Now my career is building structures and designing them, and I thoroughly enjoy my work.
I'm Mike Lambert, and I've worked with tall structures for all my working life. Over the years, I've discovered that some structures have characters all of their own, and this fascinates me.
I'm Simon Burton. I'm an IT technician and I've been interested in masts and towers since I was 10.
It's a very precarious occupation. You wouldn't think it's precarious, but it is precarious, isn't it? So skulking around transmission towers in Ministry of Defence land.
It is different, yeah.
You were once attacked by an engineer, weren't you?
It certainly was, yeah.
What happened?
I walked off up this trackway, and it was a fair distance. And I walked up to the tower at the end of this trackway, and there was an engineer in the grounds of it, and I said, "Hello." I said, "Would you mind if I could walk underneath the tower and take a picture looking up through the lattice work? What do you want to do that for?" I said, "Well, to put it with the rest of my collection." And he said, "Well, why?" And he was really grumpy at me. And I said, "Well," he goes, "Get out of here now. I don't want to see you taking any photographs around here," he said. I don't want to see you do a thing." He said, "If I see you with it, I'll have your camera off you." I said, "You can't do that, though." I said, "You can't hide this tower or anything like that." He says, "Yeah, but the tower don't belong to you, and it's, private property." I said, "But if I take the pictures from out on the land that doesn't belong to the company that owned the tower," I said, "there's no harm done, nothing at all." So I wasn't just going to go there for nothing. So I went off down towards the woods, took a few photographs at one angle, and went on to an old rubbishy Brussels sprouts field and took a few pictures looking the other way. And the next thing I saw him slamming the gate shut at the tower, jumped in his car. "Oi, oi," he goes at me. "What did I tell you?" he goes. "I'm having that comfort." And he jumped in his car and he started chasing me down the road with his car, saying that I'd been trespassing. But I hadn't. I hadn't really done anything wrong at all. And my heart was going bump, 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 bump like this, I was really worried. He got in his car, jumped out at the end of this road and tried to catch up with me again, and I went the wrong way. I went up towards a farmhouse. He got out and he tried to grab hold of me. He says, "I'm going to do a citizen's arrest on you. Give me that camera." And he got that close to me, I had to go into the field. "Right, I can get you done for trespassing now," he was going at me. "You just wait, It just all happened so quickly, really, because my friend saw me running out of this field at a gate further across because I had to run across the field. I couldn't go down the road because he'd have got me. And he quickly drove along and I jumped in the car and we were gone. But that's just another one of the funny stories that I've had in my times.
You also get the over-exuberant guard. There's a guy's got, he's a jobsworth man. He's got his job to do. He stays all day in a little hut guarding a tower because it's a military installation. And I remember we were on a site visit once in the Middle East and all piled into a Toyota Land Cruiser to go across the desert and find these military sites. We had a permit to go and visit the sites because they wanted to extend the network. And we approached this one particular tower, quite a high one, 350 foot in old money. As we approached the gate, we all got out. There was a very good friend of mine, Mr. Matsumoto of NEC. He was there with his camera, as most Japanese people are, and he jumped out of the Land Cruiser, started taking photographs. I was about 3 paces behind him, and our local man was with us. And as this guy was, and he's a lovely guy, he always had a smile on his face. As he was taking photographs of the tower, the guard, and we didn't even know there was a guard there, came out of this little hut with a Kalashnikov rifle and cocked it and came straight up to Matsumoto, by which time I was behind him. I was supporting him. And this is absolutely true. And this guy, I could see him shaking. Matsumoto was, and it's the first time I've ever seen him without a smile on his face. But
it's not just
you know, it
military
does happen.
It's not
It
just
does
military
happen.
installations. I mean, there are commercial considerations. I mean, what's on a tower is quite commercially valuable because other people want to use that tower sometimes. They need information of who's doing what, and the communications business in this country now is getting more and more competitive, and the more data anybody has got, data is valuable. Now, you can't stop, and we as tower owners can't stop people photographing them. What we can do is not necessarily publicise what the installations are on the structure, because customers themselves are nervous about giving away commercial information. So, yes, when David wants to spot a tower and tick it off, he goes along to the tower and takes a full frame photograph, and I guess that's your definition of having spotted a tower, is it, once you've got a photograph
Once
of
I've
it?
got photographs.
But he's got to understand
Is
that
it just a photograph? You don't need to cross over and be with it, or climb it, or touch
No.
it, or...
No.
But
All I
there
want is just the photographs. I mean, on a lot of occasions, I mean, I do go to sites when there's engineers there, and funny enough, a lot of the engineers know me. I mean, like one of them when I went to Stockland Hill, down near Honiton, one of the engineers go, "Oh, you're that David Neal, aren't you?" And I've never met him before. I mean, it all started from the age of 5 when I had a great interest in tall structures, especially pylons. I don't know if it was because there's a line of 400 kV that go through my village or what, but just tall structures in general.
It's
I mean,
the structure itself, isn't
yeah.
it, that gets you.
it's
But
just
why
the
did they-
lattice steel structures amaze me more than concrete and you know, like chimneys and things like that. Lattice structures amaze me
Like
much
this
more.
one.
Yeah.
But why did the pylon interest end? Just because of the actual thing it was made with, the concrete?
I'm not too sure. I think similarities, because in most cases they are a lot similar to one another. When you go to them, except, I mean, one exception is river crossings. I mean, the river crossing pylons are absolutely fascinating when you go to them, like at the Thames crossing at Dartford and the Severn crossing, which is next to the Severn Bridge. But when you come to like things like telecommunication masts, I don't think I've been to 2 that are the same.
Well,
They may be the same structure, sorry.
As you say, there are matched pairs around, but each one's got a different set of kit on it because
Yes.
of the nature of it. It is. So, I mean, David has got I only met David a few months ago for the first time, but there is no doubt that his collection of photographs is probably the most comprehensive in the country, bar none, and that's including the professionals. And he can look at a photograph and tell you where it is, almost by the cloud pattern in the background.
And who built it, who designed it, when it was built.
Certainly, I don't think anybody in my company has been to any one person has been to all our structures.
And yet you don't work in the industry, David. Is
don't
that
know.
because you
Not-
feel that if
not
you get
yet.
too close, then the mystique will go?
No, it would not. It would not. And that's right down deep in here because my passion for towers is right deep down inside now. I mean, with the masts and that. It would have gone by now. When I was a young boy, I mean, I had interest in aircrafts, cars, like everyone has, you know, when they're young. But, I mean, interests disappear, they go. I mean, like my interest in cars went, then it went to aircrafts, then my interest in aircrafts went to this. But I always had the interest in pylons, Ed. Don't sort of like think that didn't exist. But this one has stayed from the age of 12. I'm now 21, and it's pretty obvious it is not going to go.
But Alan, do you think that David would be a good person to work in the industry, or do you feel that he likes these structures maybe too much?
I think that we need a lot of enthusiastic people in the industry because if one casts one's mind back, that the people that we used to have in the industry, there's a lot of characters. David is in fact a character, maybe a little bit weird, but so what? But the enthusiasm is great, and I think that one of the best things that David could do is to be taking up some of these structures, and then he would appreciate the concepts involved in design, the safety aspects and things like that. And I think it would actually reinforce his enthusiasm.
But one needs to retain a certain emotional distance when you're working in the business community, surely.
Partly, but I think that if you lose your emotions in any part of or aspect of your work, then I think you should change your job, really.
Well, there is a theory in hobbies that if you take on a hobby profession, you lose a jolly good hobby.
Yes.
And that's true in a lot of cases.
But you three have taken it on professionally, and you don't seem to have lost
haven't.
your
No,
obsession.
there's still
Well,
fascination.
well, it is, and we're all very enthusiastic actually, because it's a need also. There's no question about it. And as Mike says, that the now with different data techniques, is that these terrestrial structures, if you like, are becoming much more valuable, and it's big business actually.
Well, I started with working on tall structures at the age of 19 or 18, just after leaving school. And apart from 8 years in the middle, I've worked with them ever since. And I wouldn't call it a passion, but I call it certainly a fascination. And those 8 years that I was away, I was working on motorway construction and I was working on chemical plant construction. But I don't go down the road wondering about motorways or chemical plants, but if I drive down a road and see a structure, I can't help but look at it, wonder what it is, whose it is, what it's doing.
So something must take over, particularly to go to that trouble of getting arrested twice. something really takes
That's
over.
probably
Does
a
something take
mistake,
over with
though.
you?
Not quite to that extent.
It's all part of
The
it.
arresting part of it is worrying because I'm a government official, and if I'm caught on a site like that, it could have implications for my job. And I wouldn't want that at all. So I don't normally let David go onto any ground or anything. Let him do all that and explain and take the pictures. I just like a getaway car down the end of a drive or something, or at the end of the
Have you and
thing.
David known each other?
Oh, about 2 or 3 years now, isn't it?
Yeah, just over 2 years
Yeah.
now.
And
Did you meet at a
how
tower?
did you meet? Yes.
Well, it was David. It was like Roger. David was on telly and another programme, and I was upstairs. My wife called me down. She said, "Listen, look at this programme. This guy interested in masts and towers." And I was like, "What? No one else interested in that kind of
And
thing."
Marston Towers had never crossed your mind.
No, well, I just had a sort of interest with them. There's one near where I used to go, when my dad used to drive us past it quite a lot. And I used to see this tall structure and think, that's quite nice, on top of a hill. You can see it from so many different places. And it's all lit up at night. And when I was younger, I was just fascinated by it.
Even though it's so man-made.
Yeah.
I mean, a naysayer would suggest that they're not the most aesthetically pleasing
No.
man-made
But necessary.
edifices.
True.
No.
For instance, if you wanted to walk through the countryside, possibly an ancient church.
Yeah. I do a lot of walking. But it's never bothered me, these things.
So,
I know
is it
it's-
is it the extremity of it, the huge
Well, if you-
metalness of it?
If you go to somewhere really nice like the Peak District, you come across two of Britain's tallest masts within a few miles of one another and structures. One is Emily Moor, which there's a model of there, as Britain's tallest freestanding structure. And then you've got Holm Moss, which is high up on Black Hill. Or not Black Hill, is it Black?
On
Black-
Penistone Moors.
It's up near
yeah.
Black
Near
Hill, yeah,
Huddersfield.
but it's Holm Moss, yeah, near
Last of
Huddersfield.
the summer wine country.
Yeah,
Yes,
and,
yes, yes.
it's right in the middle of there, and it's about 750 foot, that one, and that is one fascinating mast to go and see. That is, it is
from
the
a
way
long
it is sighted. It is just amazing.
But it's
In what way, what
it's quite
differentiates?
elegant though.
Yeah,
Actually,
it's just a
quite
tall,
elegant.
thin,
Yeah.
elegant stage
See,
structure.
what I like about it, you can see it from so far away.
Yeah.
That's what I like about these, especially the taller masts. Not as much about the
I think
smaller
one of the
ones.
things that I
They feel
find
far away.
fascinating with David is that I couldn't believe that there was anybody outside the industry, which is Mike, Alan, myself are in, and it's a fairly small industry.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that anybody outside it had that sort of passion.
No,
When
I-
I
I-
actually connected with David,
Yeah.
I thought, in fact, when I wrote to him, I saved it on my computer as, I thought, well, save it as something, and I put mast nut.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's why it may be a bit weird. Really.
And I think I even said in the letter that it was, it's fascinating to come across somebody
Could
who's
I mention
got
one
a
thing
passion.
quickly though? That the fascination in mast is not associated with anoraks.
I was going to say,
But you do.
you seem to
You do
accept.
get called. Sorry.
Well, you seem to accept that mast nut motif with a weary resignation.
But where does it differ from train spotting, other than the fact that it's much more positive? Because if you stand on Crewe Station long enough, the trains come to you.
Yes.
In this case, you've got to
gotta go
hack
out and
across
find them.
peat
Yeah.
bogs and heaven knows what else
Yeah,
to get to
that's
these
right.
sites.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's the train spotters have their Ian Allen book. David has his list from ourselves, from the BBC,
From
from other
BBC,
people in
yeah,
the stations, and it's super to think that somebody has got that sort of interest in them.
And you talking about having to go out and find these masts. Myself and Simon, a few months ago, we spent a very long day out. We started very early in the morning, and we done something in the region of 780 odd miles in a day. and we covered 43 different transmission sites. We went to Membury, so we went through Swindon, Devizes, Bristol, Taunton.
You probably see the big one at Wells there.
Honiton. We went to the Mendip Mast.
Yeah.
We went to Stockland Hill. We wanted to get some pictures of Membury, but we went out of we pulled too far out of the services, so we was on the slip road, so we couldn't stop on the slip road and take the pictures.
Arrested again.
I was wondering, seeing something like the cathedral, the old, our old great paeans to the gods, and
Yeah.
looking at the new ones, they are slightly more aesthetically pleasing, are they not, the cathedrals?
I love cathedrals. I mean, to some extent, I've got books galore about cathedrals and cathedral architecture at home, but I'm still into the masts and towers too.
So is it a height thing with you then?
I don't know.
Actually, I
I
think,
find it
just to interrupt, I think that David, and going through a lot of his photographs, he actually picks out different styles of towers and masts, and also different antennas on them as well. So it's not just ticking off, I've been to this site. He actually is interested in the concept as well, what they're doing as
A
well.
lot of people don't like it because I've been to some sites and I've said, I know that tower links through to there. I know what that's for. And they say, where do you know that from? And this is just from me travelling around, finding it out
Sure.
myself.
I find that
Some time ago, I showed David this photograph here, which is a tower covered very, very heavily in ice. And he immediately told me where it was, whose tower it was, and what the antennas were.
And what is it?
That looks like Home
What's that?
Moss.
And where is it?
Pardon?
Is that Home Moss? Is it?
No, that one's up at Brownclea Hill. And it's a
Alright.
Home Office tower.
Right.
And the two microwave links, which you can see down the bottom here, link through to Radnor Forest. And it's a UHF one for
As
the
I say,
police.
not many people know that.
Not a
And
lot
even,
of people know
even
that.
covered in ice. We were talking earlier about the difference between the masts, but rather than just having an aesthetic difference, there's also, you feel, Michael, a difference in personality. You get good masts, you
Well,
get bad masts.
Yeah, I mean, I started my working career in mast design, so I feel as I've been at the conception of these masts, and you feel that they almost get a personality. Some masts are well behaved from the day they're designed through to the day they enter service and beyond. Other masts seem to give trouble from the moment you put pen to paper. And we've got some now, I won't name them, but we regard them as bad-tempered. Because whatever you do to them, they seem to object, they oscillate, or they give problems.
In what
Other
way?
masts are as good as gold.
In what way?
Well, I mean, some masts have dynamic instability problems where if the wind blows, they start to shake around. And another mast built to exactly the same drawings, in exactly the same way, doesn't do that.
And you get leaning mast, the leaning mast of Wensleydale. didn't
Ah,
you?
well, that was an embarrassment, I have to tell you. I was on a walking holiday in Wensleydale, and of course I was enjoying the scenery, but there on the hilltop was a small 150-foot television relay tower. And the antenna sticking out the top was undoubtedly leaning quite seriously. So I thought, well, when I get back, I'll speak to my colleagues about this. And I contacted my colleagues and said, oh, the tower at Wensleydale, the top antenna pole, is leaning. They said, yes, we know. You're about the 700th person to tell us. It's done on purpose because we want to fire down the valley, and it's what they call mechanical beam tilt on the antenna. But he did confess it was a big mistake. You can get the same effect electrically when you leave the antenna straight, and it saves the phone calls, because I was only one of many hundreds who've rung in and told them they've got a problem.
A similar
But I
thing-
was, being in the business, I was a bit embarrassed by the...
A similar thing happened to me in Canary Wharf. I flew above Canary Wharf and saw smoke coming out of the top, and naturally, thought I thought it was going to be great. I was going to, make the news and everything. Discovering
steam
the
coming off of a greenhouse on the top of it.
it's a steam greenhouse situation.
Yeah.
But you actually go, you can also look at other things. I mean, Roger knows the structure I'm talking about down near Wells, which we talked about earlier, and there's rumours that there are other effects, which are almost religious effects that actually cause that structure to have...
What, like
to
the
misbe-
structure was built on an ancient
Yes.
Indian burial ground?
It's
Yes.
on the Mendip.
Well, it was certainly
Exactly.
built,
Like Daventry,
it was certainly
right.
built over the Mendip Caves. You know, the ones in the poem from the rugged miners poured to war from Mendip's sunless caves in the Armada, and those caves are under there. And there's some thought that the site is actually haunted,
Yeah.
and
It's
it's certainly
ancient rites.
Goodness, what religion?
Well, it actually goes back to, I think it's Bronze Age, isn't it? In fact, there, and there was part of the ancient worshippers, obviously, there is an old settlement up on the top there, and they felt that, well, it was built a little bit away, but in fact, there's a lot of people feel, I'm sorry, but the problem is 3,000, 5,000 years ago, actually.
And how is it manifesting itself?
Well, we had a foundation block moved for no apparent reason. Another one cracked.
But you're talking about...
tons and tons
Yeah,
of concrete moved from.
Yeah, you're talking
Well, actually,
about...
literally moved from one area
Yeah.
to another area.
During
Well, not quite like
Of its
that,
own fruition.
Not in a few minutes or even a few months, but there's a regular inspection on most of the structures, or in
You
fact
don't
all
think
the structures
just
around the country.
subsidence?
Well, that was checked for and didn't appear to be the
It
problem.
didn't appear to be. It didn't appear to be.
This is
Because,
second hand, but people have
yeah.
heard strange sounds on the sites
I
as
was
well.
just about to say, I've been to one site. I'm just trying to think. I think it was Hull Moss when I first went there, and it was quite a windy day, and you could hear howling. But I think that was just through the stays. I think that was just the stays howling. I mean, that does occur, doesn't it?
But yes, that does. But Mendip, of course, is a tubular structure, and it's just like a vast organ pipe. So you could well imagine a very, very low moaning note being generated by the wind, and that could be what people
into
have heard.
any
It's a
orifice.
huge cylinder of
Yeah.
steel.
But we have a,
Sorry.
we have a site in Lancashire where people who go up to the site who know nothing about the site at all feel very uncomfortable on the site. And my wife was one who's not particularly sensitive, but she says she feels very uncomfortable on that site. And further down the road, there's a memorial to a Scotsman who was murdered there by brigands in the 18th century, I think. And the theory is that he inhabits the site and lives in the transmitter building now. Now, you can't do anything about that. If people don't know that story and they're still uncomfortable on the site, it's a bit weird.
What kind of uncomfortable? Was it just a generic, intangible negative
Yes.
energy?
Yeah,
rather than
I
any
mean, I haven't
specific-
experienced it myself, but I believe people feel they're being watched, or there's somebody behind them, or that sort of feeling. So,
Actually, an interesting thing is that if, for instance, that you've ever been up to the top of these structures where this was before mobile telephones, whatever, you can sit up there and you can feel absolutely at peace with the world.
absolutely,
yes.
yes.
Because there's nothing that will invade your privacy. And it's a very nice feeling,
I have to
actually.
say, though,
Here,
Alan, one
anything.
morning at 4 o'clock when I was at the top of 1,250 feet up Belmont,
Yeah.
sitting at the very top there, I began to wonder, what am I doing here?
I would agree with that.
I think
one.
we've all been there.
You know, photograph that a man showed me of a mast at Winter Hill,
Yes.
which is just north of Manchester, near Bolton. This is one of the 1,000 tubular masts again, and this engineer who I was talking to at another NTL site showed me a photograph. And this day when he went up this mast, it was absolute thick fog in the winter, and he had to do some maintenance work up this mast. I think it was about 50 or 70 foot from the top. He said, but he had his camera with him that day. And he took it up with him, and he went up through the fog and came out into beautiful sunshine. And he said he was up at almost the top of the mast, and he took a photograph looking down, and it was a brilliant photograph. Just looking down, all you could see was the mast and just a white sea of fog, and then the shadow of the mast going across the fog. And I mean, it would just be something that I'd really want to do.
I remember
To
seeing
see something like that.
I've been at the top of a mast where it's sunny and come down to the bottom and it's raining. The rain starts between you and the top of the
You
structure.
can actually see from the top of some of these masts, in that sort of situation, particularly if it's light rain, you can actually see a circular rainbow
Yes,
looking down.
yeah, absolutely
Yeah.
true.
There was a rumour circulating Cardiff, where I grew up, that if you had two masts, you would know that in the direct centre of these two masts would be the underground nuclear power. Not nuclear power, the underground nuclear shelter in case of a nuclear war. Is this?
I think that's
don't think
apocryphal,
so.
actually.
I've not heard of anything along those lines.
There's no connection.
I know there's two big masts near Cardiff. Of course, you've got St Hilary and Wenvoe.
It was. It was.
Yes.
St Hilary and Wenvoe.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure about Wenvoe, but certainly.
St Hilary.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things about mast security, which concerns us very much, is this problem of terrorism, which David talked about. But in this country, in fact, in most countries, they don't actually want to blow the structures up. What they want to do is to take them prisoner and use them for propaganda if there ever was a problem like that.
Has it never been attempted in this country?
We haven't had a terrorist attack, but what we've had two serious vandal attacks. Now, the one we're talking about, the 1,000-foot mast at Winter Hill, about 3 or 4 years ago now, somebody started to try and hacksaw through one of the guy wires, and they got about a third of the way through. And had they succeeded, the mast would inevitably have come down. Now, we never found out a motive. We never found out a miscreant. and we had to replace the stay. But
I wonder whether it was an anti-technology type, a Unabomber type.
Probably somebody
Yes.
who doesn't like them.
but then if somebody does that, you'd expect them to capitalise on their attempt, wouldn't you? Or maybe they waited because it failed, they didn't. But we've had other tires where freestanding tires like that one there, where people have started off through the legs with hacksaw blades. And it's actually quite a problem because these tires are inevitably on hilltops, a long way from civilization. There's no way that you can protect them against that sort of thing, short with armed guards and dogs.
Well-
And if you think about every program that's going out, this one included, is going up over 1,000 structures. It takes 1,000 structures to cover this country. Then there's an awful lot of protection to do just to protect the television service.
Now, has there ever been any talk within the industry of possibly building camouflaged ones
Yes.
that look like nature?
Yes, we have some particular sensitive areas we use wood poles so that they look more like trees.
Very tall trees, of course.
Well, 17 metre,
Yeah.
17, 20 metre wood pole is quite possible.
As tall as a giant redwood.
That's right.
Which,
yes.
of course, you don't find in Britain, so that'd be a strange...
It'd be strange anyway.
You've got a problem with 300 metres, though, to make it look like a tree. It wouldn't look like a tree anymore.
What is
yeah.
happening
Especially if
now?
it's completely alone on the top of a very tall hill, one mighty redwood.
A lot of these wooden poles, though, are done along valley sides and for small relays. They are. I
In
mean,
the Middle
Mike
East,
knows plenty
they
more about that than I
actually
do.
produce monopoles, which are for telecommunications, GSM, mobiles. They make them out of palm trees, actually.
See, that's nice.
Yeah.
You think
But
that's
very
nice?
to a pure structural engineer like myself, there's nothing more beautiful than a tapered lattice, open mesh structure with a white antenna on the top.
Like
it's
that,
a
that's a
monument.
classic.
Like
I
that.
doubt if palm
Well-
trees would excite David either.
Well, how would you
They look like a
feel if
palm
they were
tree.
all palm trees?
Well, if they were all the same, then and similar to that, but like on different heights, I probably wouldn't bother taking the pictures of them. It's like with the mobile phone towers. I mean,
one.
in a way, I've normally said, once you've seen one, you've seen them all, because in a lot of cases it is true.
Well, I think also
But they're all
David
different.
and Simon
Yeah, but they're different. They've got different antennas on different microwave links and stuff like that. But the general structure of the tower is the same.
Yeah. And I think actually, if you have an ambition to spot, either of you, all the structures in this country, I have to tell you they're going up at the rate of 9 a day at the moment. Literally every day, 7 days a week, there's 9 new structures going up for mobile phones.
That's
So,
Most of them are only about 15 metres.
but they're very, very small. Yes. Yeah.
But going back to talking about complaining, though, I mean, I can understand in some cases where people complain because when I've been like up the M40, you come across a motorway bridge and you see an orange tower one side, a Cellnet one the other side of the road that crosses over, and then a few hundred yards up the motorway again, you see a Vodafone, and you see another one. You see like 4 towers within a few yards of one another, and it is very silly when you get things like that.
Yeah, one of the problems there is that the planners are ambivalent. They don't want a lot of towers and they don't want a tall tower. Well, to get those 4 services, you've either got to have 4 separate towers which are little or one bigger tower. And what they want is one little tower or preferably no towers at all.
Could they not have 4 little towers so close together that from a distance it looks like one
I think
little
they
tower?
interfere with each other. I
Yeah,
think
that would be the
electronically
main
there's a
thing, yeah.
problem there.
Actually, though, effectively they do that on the television transmission, though, because take any of NTL or BBC sites, it's co-transmission out of the one site, so they cut them all down, and they've had to do that, really. There's also a lot of money involved in it. I mean,
Yeah.
this is why NTL actually are vastly rich, aren't they, Mike?
No, I mean, we do our best to share. In fact, we have in some cases a legal obligation, and in all other cases a moral obligation to let anybody onto a structure who wants to share it to avoid this duplication and proliferation of structures. And we give undertaking to planners often as a condition of building a structure that we will allow other people to share it with us as well, and that solves that problem.
We mentioned that tower, which is the Toronto Tower.
No, no.
This one here is the
Ah,
Cellnet
this
tower,
is
Toronto.
it. This is it. And you designed this tower.
No, we didn't design it. We did the top systems in there, the antenna systems and GRP and whatever. That's 600 metres high, the overall height of that tower.
There's a flight of stairs here, I notice, which...
Well, you need to provide, as you can see, or anybody who's been to the CN Tower, there are high-speed lifts that actually run up the outside.
I noticed on that side, but stairs on this side.
Well, if the lift breaks down, how do you get down? So like on most tall structures, there's got to be a safety route down, and that has a revolving restaurant. But that's one of our best achievements, actually, providing the UHF, VHF, and FM transmission systems for that, and it's the tallest structure of that type in the world.
You talk about the fascination of tall structures, but why is it that people want to eat in a restaurant revolving 600 feet above the 600 metres above the ground? What is it that makes people who go to Paris want to go up the Eiffel Tower or to Blackpool? It's not just, if you like,
it's a thrill,
the enthusiasts. Everybody. I went to Prague a couple of years ago with my family, and we were lucky enough to be invited up the new tower in Prague.
Which has got shopping.
Well, it would have had. They've built on the galleries, again, I have a photograph of it here, which I took. It's built with antennas at the top and little pods all the way up, the idea was to have shops and restaurants and cafes and things. But sadly, they haven't got around to developing that side yet, so it's all empty and rather ghostly in there. You go into these, up the lifts into these empty pods. I don't actually know.
You're supposed to know.
I didn't even know it existed until today.
Yes.
Being that close to so many radio waves, doesn't some of the waves get into the food?
No, there's
No danger.
all antennas do radiate at certain levels, but first of all they're directional, and secondly there are very, very close and legal checks on what you're allowed to, how close you're allowed to go, either general public or the working people on sites, and there are meters to measure this and very severe checks, so that will be designed out of that problem.
I personally missed the day of the revolving tower at the revolving restaurant at the top of the post office tower.
If that had still been here today,
Why?
I'd have been up there.
Security.
It was because of the IRA, the risk of the IRA, wasn't it? When the old bombing started.
I mean,
Which is a shame, really.
When we built the tower at Emily Moor there, you can see the little blob just below the antennas there. Now that is actually an observation gallery which is glassed all the way around. It's accessed by 2 lifts, and there's no doubt at all it'd be a tremendous tourist attraction. But security and the problems that one would have, you only need somebody to leave a small package bomb up there, and it would take out television for the whole of north of England, basically. So sadly, it's not open to the public.
And sadly, it'll probably take a few people with it if
That's
an
right.
event like that
But
did happen.
the view from the top of there, I can tell you, is fascinating. You can see virtually to the east coast one way and to the Pennine Range with the Lancashire Hills the other way.
A lot of overseas countries, for instance, Malaysia, they've just completed the telecommunications tower in the middle of Kuala Lumpur, and we did the systems for that as well. And the tremendous tourist attractions, tremendous. There's going to be a new one built in Jakarta,
Yes.
and they're dotting all over the world.
Germany have a lot of these in a lot of their cities, especially around the Ruhr area. I went to Dusseldorf, and they've got something that looks like that, but it's obviously not as big, about half the size. But again, they've got a gallery where people can sit and look around with glass floors. You can look straight through your feet down to the ground.
Do you have an interest, Simon and David, really, on concrete towers? Or is it the fact that you're looking in the main on structural lattice steel towers?
I'm more on the side of lattice towers, but I do find the old concrete ones pretty fascinating too.
Why less so?
I'm not too sure, really. I think it's probably when you look at the lattice towers, like for example, when you go to a place like Crystal Palace.
Yeah.
When you go to a tower like that, it's absolutely fascinating when you look at the steelwork that was involved in that.
It's like a mechanical
and
set when
Croydon,
you
I
were
mean, the
kids.
NTL Tower at Croydon down the road is just another amazing monument to the world of radio towers.
Do you ever wonder how we built them?
I've been told a few bits about how they're built, but I don't know a lot about it.
When you think that at Crystal Palace there, those 4 legs are 120 feet apart and they don't meet till they reach 60 feet above ground level or thereabouts. Each structure, each of the legs itself was a structure in its own right and had to be built separately until they first joined. And then above that you have the same problem again as each panel went up.
Yeah.
And the building of them themselves is actually quite a fascinating thing. And I think that's one thing which fascinates me.
Well, even as Emily Moor, concrete, you think concrete, you go up to the top of Emily Moor and you stand up there, and if you're prone to travel sickness, you could be sick because
It's actually
I always felt that way about the revolving restaurant, I must say.
sometimes that's the case, and you don't need a very strong wind to start
To
it
shake
moving.
it.
But
It has to that's move
designed,
because
sure.
it is a
But it's
structure, it has to
designed
move.
into it.
But also, wouldn't it destabilise the actual food on the plate?
No, it's not that violent.
No.
There is a thing, I don't know if you've heard about it
It's the point.
in architecture, but they have what is called the sick building syndrome, and one of it is to do with air conditioning, but another is to do with slight movement. And I went to an international conference on wind engineering a couple of years ago, and there was a Japanese talking about some of the buildings in Tokyo which tend to move at a certain frequency. And I don't know if it was a mistranslation of what he was saying, but he said some of the girls find it very stimulating. I think he meant upsetting.
In some cases, there's been a time when I've gone to a site and I thought, blast it, I can't get a photograph of that tower from here, like that. And there's been times when I've even knocked on people's doors and said, do you mind if I could go in your back garden and take a picture looking across so I can get that tower, because you've got all the houses along the front, and the only way you can get a picture with the full tower in is to use a zoom lens in someone's back garden. And I've showed people my photographs, and they've been a little bit iffy about it, but they've let me do it. Which is really nice.
Turns up with a pile of books like that. You know, they've got to believe you, haven't they?
Yes.
Well, that's the thing.
As a matter of interest, David, have you ever counted up how many structures you've actually photographed?
I've not officially counted how many I've been to, but it's over 300.
Because I calculated the other day that altogether around the country there's about 9,000 structures.
Yeah, and I'd love to count.
Long way to go.
So there's a little way to go yet. But I think
It's a little fraction compared to what there is.
you've got the biggies, I think, most of the biggies.
I've got most of the big NTL
Well, is there one
masts.
in particular that you haven't been to which you'd love to see?
No, there's plenty. I need to get to Holmos again. I need to go to Winter Hill, Black Hill, Durris, Mount Eagle, Rumster Forest.
You're all in Scotland,
Yeah.
so they're a long way to go.
Yeah,
to go.
Rumster Forest,
A lot of the
Rosemarkie,
Western Isles, yeah.
Rossneath.
Why Holmos again?
Holmos, because the first time I went to Holmos was when we was on a holiday with my family, and I'm not very good at using what SLR cam or what are they? The SLR cameras. I'm not very good at using cameras like that, and the photographs just didn't come out. I mean, that's why I use a fully automatic one now, and the photographs, well, crap. That's the easiest way to explain
So you
it.
need to go back and take some more.
Yeah, so I've got to go back there and get some more photographs of it.
David, I have to tell you, if you can hone up your photographing skills, we pay people to drive around the country photographing structures.
Well, in some cases, if I can just grab this back, you don't.
I think
it's not
that's an
the-
invitation.
It's not the person
That's right.
it's not the person's skills; it gets the photograph. Because if you look at ones like
Be handy for you and
This
me if
one.
that happened as well.
Yes, yes.
that one here,
yeah,
is
yeah.
a beautiful photograph.
It is, yeah.
That one
Yes.
there of a British Telecom tower called Carlton Scroop near Grantham.
Oh, we went.
And me and Simon went to that one, and I think that is probably one of my best photographs of a British Telecom tower. I just love the way the micro. It's how can you explain it? It's the
But this-
perspective of it, the way the dish aerials are. Look, if you
But
look at that,
that's-
the way the dish aerials are.
Have you got those pen and ink sketches that
I have got my pen and ink drawings here. Yeah.
'Cause when I first went to see David after the
It's all right.
after our initial telephone call, I found that he produced this sort of thing, and I couldn't believe. Well, asking him how long that sort of thing took, which didn't appear to be very long, he then proceeded to get out more and more of these of different types of tower, different types of mast, which he's got there.
And is that
really,
perfect
that's a
in-
talent.
in-
That is a talent.
I'll try and find you my
I've
favourites.
used one of these for one of our exhibitions. Eve Transmission have got a company in Africa, and we did an exhibition there last year. And I actually took this pen and ink drawing and took part of it and blew it up photographically as the backdrop to the stand, and it absolutely wonderful.
Extraordinary. How precise is this?
That one's not amazingly precise compared to what I do today.
This one here
I mean, that
is a good example.
that's a nice one. I like that one. That's one of my favourites.
In terms of its preciseness?
Yeah, that is a real tower site. In fact, the photograph of it is in that BT microwave radar relay book, and you can compare the two just like that.
Do you work from the photograph then? David?
I worked on that
Sometimes,
one. If you go back this way,
Sorry.
there, that's it there. And if you look at the two, that was drawn from that photograph.
Good, right down to the type of ground and the...
That was manure, by the
bushes.
way. that was manure. And well, I had to go there with my my boots and stuff on to get pictures of that one.
How long does that take you, David, to sketch one of those?
It's very difficult to explain how long they take to draw because I normally spend like 2 or 3 hours an evening doing a picture. So I'd probably say I normally spend about 4 or 5 days doing them. So it's about 15 to 20 hours.
It can be a ruthless industry though
So,
too.
yeah.
I heard a story, Alan, of in your Nigerian leg of the chief accountant who was complaining about.
Oh, yeah. Yes. I mean, there are several stories like that, but our chief accountant was constantly complaining his salary was very poor in relation to the outside salary people, and we know this is the case. And anyway, our general manager, he got totally fed up of this, so he said, Pius, you come with me. So they went to Baden, and he said, now, Pius, you see they are building this tower. He says, yes, I see it. It's okay. You can now go up and see what they're doing. So they put him in the cradle, lifted him up, all very secure, safe and everything. He got 20 feet off the ground, screamed, forget it. Take me down, take me down. I will not complain ever about my salary. He said, they deserve everything they get, you know. And there's several things like that, and there's another one which occurred very soon after that. It was Nigeria. In fact, we were amazed at the volumes of paint. This is red and white. They don't paint towers in the UK, by the way. You'll see that.
How do you protect them?
Yeah, yes. They don't go international coating. So we were amazed at this tower, which was about 100 metres. We were using tons and tons of paint. Anyway, about 3 or 4 months later, our general manager happened to go to the village of a couple of the erectors, and he found a red and white village. So they'd just taken the paint, painted it and things like that. And there's lots of, we were talking earlier about characters in the industry have disappeared. We have some wonderful
I
characters.
think that's absolutely true. I think it's old men remembering. But
Probably that's it.
there's
Yeah.
an expression in the trade called it's known as the mast mafia, and it's absolutely true that if you get two people together who have anything to do with these structures, either they know each other already or they have a mutual acquaintance. And if I mention names like to anybody who's ever been involved in radio communications or structures, names like Sandy Paxton or Ginger Noble, everybody immediately would recognise those names of characters from the past. But the only reason why you think that there are characters out there now, Alan. It's just that you and I don't come across them as often as we did.
That's quite a cynical attitude, though.
I think that's just too cynical.
Why?
Well, I firmly believe because of the difference in the conditions that existed years ago and what they had to put up with, they came up with some wonderful ideas on how to install these things.
There are stories I can tell you. Like we were working in Northern Ireland at the Strabane mast, we were building that, and the derrick, the steel derrick, which is like the pole which is used to lift all the sections up, it was 8-inch hollow tube, and to rig this, you have to get a rope up through the middle of it. This thing was 40 feet long. Now it's very difficult to get a rope up a 40-foot tube. So they found a little, and I think it was a terrier dog, and they tied a rope to that and then put a sandwich at the far end, and this dog hammered through the tube, taking the rope with it. You know,
little things like that.
But then on the same site, the chap who was on the site there, the gang adopted the site mascot, who was a donkey in the adjacent field. And they used to feed this donkey with all their sandwiches, and this donkey became one of the gang, and it used to come on the site, and they actually got it pulling ropes out eventually, tying ropes around it. It was pulling ropes out to the far end of the field and helping with the construction. So as a treat, when they'd finished the mast, and it was all completely built, the gang was at the top, and they were taking the erector's cradle up the top with all the equipment in, and they came to the edge as the cradle came up, and the winch driver said, cradle's getting close, and they looked, and the donkey was in the cradle. They'd put the donkey in. It was 1,000 feet up in the air. This donkey had gone up to the top to see the top of the mast and back again. Now, if you did that
was his reward.
If you did that now, I mean, you know, but that was.
Well, nowadays they wouldn't consider it a donkey reward, would they? They'd consider it cruelty to donkey.
Something like that. Yeah.
Tell me, I guess there are people watching this now who remember that.
Yeah.
Tell me about Sandy Paxton.
Sandy Paxton, I think he's more of your compatriot.
Yeah, he was an interesting character. One of these people, a character from almost too big to be real. He was a trawlerman by profession, and when he was ashore, he drove the winch on the stretcher. He never climbed a stretcher at all, but he was a winchman. And in the early days I'm talking about now, which is the late 50s, early 60s, the winches were very different from how they are now, and we used quite small winches to carry men up. And when I was a very young lad and was in the chair for about the first time, he took me up to the top of a 600-foot mast and decided, we'll give this young lad a bit of a surprise. So he dropped me like a stone for about the first 500 feet just by letting the brake off the winch. You just sort of free fall in the chair down the pilot wire, and then 100 feet from the ground slow you down and bring you in nicely.
Can I
Which
just
is
say there must be a very fine line between being a colourful cat and being a psychopath.
I mean, the danger there is, of course, that if you get out of the chair, you go and strangle him. I mean, you've got to be very, very careful, because it's an intensely silly thing to do. And if you did it now, you'd be prosecuted. Well, you couldn't do it because the equipment won't let you do it.
Yeah.
But that's the sort of character thing you're thinking about. I guess they're still going on things like that, but not perhaps as...
But do you think maybe those days are gone because industry changes?
Yeah.
Everything
It does.
becomes much
Everything
more about
is very
money
much
and-
faster now. Everything... It's sad in a way that there aren't times for things like that, but it's not just our industry. I think all industries now, everything's in a hurry. Everything's got to be done yesterday. And
If you look at the history of steel structures, for instance, going back to Brunel and the designs and the installations of these things. But Moss, you were talking about the original mast there, that was put up in 1930 odd. Very difficult structure to install, but I believe they built that in just over a month. And we did the replacement, and we took something like 3 months. So I mean, comparison is we're slow at our job, if you like, but it's weather and everything else, and techniques,
safety, and all
safety
sorts of
procedures, and
problems which-
everything.
yes.
Yet it goes full circle. There's now a requirement to put DAB antennas on there. And the environmentalists come out of the woodwork and say you can't do that. And there's a 405 lobby of, dare I say, anoraks out there somewhere that don't want that to happen. They want it to stay as it is, the structure. Visibly, they want to see it as it was. And they're saying, no. So there's a problem. It's sort
I
of...
wouldn't think there'd be a conservation
You wouldn't think...
lobby
that-
in the structural
That's right.
area, but there certainly
That's
is.
right.
Well, I know a person who thinks that some of the masts in the United Kingdom should now go into like the National Heritage and other things like that, and should because there is a very, very interesting tower up in Essex near Faxted, called the Daffodil Tower at Sibley's, and
Have you got it?
I have got a picture of it, and it is a very fascinating one. I don't think you've been there, Simon.
No.
No.
What is
I
it
think me and
called,
my
the
friend
Daffodil
Chris-
Tower?
The concept of the Daffodil Tower was, it was a whole series.
You can see it from
Oh,
the
that's
M11.
the columns. that
Yeah, a
go
whole
up.
series
Yeah,
of square
yeah,
columns
yeah.
surmounted by a horn aerial, which looks like a daffodil
Yeah, I've
petal.
seen
And when you
it,
get
yeah.
them all together, they look like a bunch of daffodils.
Yeah. But they took the horn aerial, did they
Took the
not?
horn aerial.
Yeah,
There's
the
one
horn
horn aerial
aerials.
on each
Yeah.
column.
That's a game, yeah.
They're the two pictures of it. One from a diagonal sort of angle, showing you how much is actually involved in it, and then one from a straight-on view.
And you think this one should have a preservation order?
It should have something put on it, yes.
Yeah, they
to
don't look particularly
preserve
pretty,
it.
do they? I mean,
Well, it looks
compared
like a bunch of daffodils.
to an Eiffelized
Yeah.
shape.
When I went there, I thought, blimey, look at that thing, and I just couldn't believe it.
One thing that hasn't been discussed in the last hour, because it's a sensitive subject and I don't want to offend anybody, is the sexual nature of these towers. And you were saying earlier that the irony of the fact that your name is Alan Dick, A. Dick, and your job is to construct erections.
Yes. Well, we actually specialise in erections. Yes, we do.
And we
But
compete with him.
this is
My
true.
erection is bigger than yours.
Yeah.
I wonder if you ever stopped to think,
I remember the way I put it when somebody asked me a question once. They say, "Oh, what are you interested in?" I said, "I'm interested in tall erections," and I thought,
But it's not an all, it's not
I
an
felt
all-male
really
world.
stupid when I said
There's a
that.
different language in our industry as well. You get bosom angles and things like that, don't
That's,
you?
that's right. Yeah.
And dead men.
Yeah.
I mean,
do you know what a bosom angle is?
no.
It's an angle that fits inside another one. In fact, so.
I mean, I don't personally hold to the whole Freudian phallic situation.
I don't think people do.
No.
But I wonder whether, I mean, has it ever crossed your mind that you're going day to day to look at these very tall metal symbols of man's empowerment over nature?
I don't know.
I don't think so, because I think that
What
the
way do you want me
interest
to try and explain it?
Um,
That's what I'm.
all in the slightest.
What's that, Simon?
I don't see it in that way. I don't know. I've never even thought of anything like that.
Again,
Just
you know,
things.
without going anorakish, you can't say that a steam engine is or can you? I mean, is that a great source of power and has some Freudian connection with
Try
people?
another one,
Well,
Mike.
People are fascinated by that.
Freud-
Stamps.
Yeah, stamps.
Stamps. I mean, are they
Stamps,
Freudian?
no.
Powerful powers.
Freud did say that sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. But there is a large school of thought that
Dummy tip.
that the steam train going into the tunnel and so on.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, sure. I mean, one of the things
I'm
I can
blushing
get.
to bring these things up.
I mean, there is no discrimination in this industry. I talk about the mafia, but I mean, but in reality, if you went to any mass construction site, the chances are that all the gang would be male, and all the engineers would be male. I mean,
And are there any women who share your passion?
Well, with the amount of people that got back to me on past things that I've done, I think it was 28 people, and they're all male. All of them. I mean, if there is ever a feminine type out there who's into this, then
You can say the word
Get in.
a woman.
woman, I don't care. I don't mind, but I'm just saying, if there's one out there, get in touch.